Poems will often put as much meaning in their structure as they do their language, and that's why it's so important to analyze, because it can really deepen the analysis that you have already done of the language. Language is also the key to analysing the structure of the poem. A lot of students struggle with analysing the structure of a poem because they just try to analyse the structure on its own. They look at the fact that the poem is in stanzas and they think, okay, why is it in stanzas? What can I say about that? Or they look at the fact that it is a sonnet and they say, okay, what's a sonnet? What can I say about that? Doing it that way, focusing on the technique first, means that it's going to be really hard for you to think about what the effect is, because you're not basing it on sufficient evidence. You're basing it off of one thing. The trick to analysing the structure of a poem is to start with the language. Start by analysing the language of the poem, asking yourself what effect that language creates, what themes it links to, how it's getting those themes across, and then ask yourself, how does the structure of the poem reinforce what the language is already saying? I'll say that again. Look at the language first, then how the structure reinforces what the language is saying. So one of the first things we have to ask ourselves is, when we talk about the poem structure, what do we mean? Well, it's basically two key things. How is the poem laid out on the page? So the stanza length, the line length, the presentation of the punctuation, any enjambment. And second of all, the order that the poem runs in. How does it begin? How does it end? Is there anything that happens in the middle? That's basically what we're looking at with structure. First of all, I'm just going to give you some necessary background information about this poem. So this is a poem all about a son who has moved into a new house and they've asked their mum to come help them. However, it explores much deeper themes to do with growing up and how mother-child relationships can change over time as the child gets older and gains more independence. For my trick of how to analyse structure to work, you kind of have to analyse the language first. That's what we've got to therefore start off with. If we have a look at this poem, in fact, you know what? Let's start by reading the poem, shall we? Nice and simple. So, Mother Any Distance by Simon Armitage. Mother, any distance greater than a single span requires a second pair of hands. You come to help me measure windows, pelmets, doors, the acres of the walls, the prairies of the floors. You at the zero end, me with the spool of tape, recording length, reporting meters, centimeters, back to base, then leaving up the stairs, the line still feeding out, unreeling years between us. Anchor, kite. I spacewalk through the empty bedrooms, climb the ladder to the loft, to breaking point, where something has to give. 2 floors below, your fingertips still pinch the last 1/100th of an inch. I reach towards a hatch that opens on an endless sky, to fall or fly. Oh man, I really promised I wasn't going to fangirl out. Okay, let's just move on before I start crying. So in terms of our language techniques then, one of the really big techniques in this poem is the extended metaphor of how helping a son moving house is a metaphor for like helping your child to kind of move on in life. And we can see that in this line, you at the zero end, me with the spool of tape, recording length, reporting meters, centimeters, back to base, then leaving up the stairs, the line still feeding out, unreeling years between us. So there, that act of measuring out the house is a metaphor for the relationship between them, and how as you get older in life, you're constantly like, you've got your parent there as your kind of base that you're feeding back your experiences to, but there's also a distance growing between you as you get older, and you're getting further away and you're kind of developing more and becoming more and more independent, and therefore getting further and further away from them. So we can analyze that from that kind of two ways of interpreting the action of, you know, reporting meters. Yes, literally telling you, hey mum, this wall is 30 centimeters long, or what kind of wall is 30 centimeters long? You know what I mean. You're measuring the wall. This is how long the wall is. But it's also a metaphor for how you are reporting, like, you know, the experiences you've had, and your kind of parent is supporting you with that. If we then think about, okay, well, how does the structure support that? What we can see here is we've got this enjambment just after unreeling years between us. Now, if that metaphor is all about trying to suggest about the space that's growing between parent and child as the child goes older. We can also see how the enjambment reinforces that idea, because what it does is it makes us, if you think about how you read it, you have to go unreeling years between us. You have to physically, in the act of reading, create like a space between those two words. And so it's like, on the one hand, unreeling years, they're completely connected. Okay, you have to read unreeling years, but they're also really far apart because the enjambment has put them on two different lines. And so what Armitage has really done is he's created that physical feel to the distance that's growing between them using that enjambment. And we see that again when in the last stanza we have that line, 2 floors below, your fingertips still pinch the last 1/100th of an inch. Now there we've got the metaphor of like the parent trying to hold on to their child by like pinching at the kind of last time that they've got left with them. That last 1/100th of an inch is like that last bit of time where they can, you know, be a big role in their child's life before their child goes and becomes fully independent. And again, that pinch and its connotations of like barely holding on and perhaps a little bit of desperation to it as well is further reinforced by that enjambment, which again creates the physicality of how far they are. And we can also say that's reinforced by the rhyme too, because inch and pinch rhyme, but they're not neatly at the end of two lines. It's not pinch and then the inches at the very end of the next line after it. They're kind of like almost, they don't quite meet up in the same line. The rhyme happens within the next line. So from a structural point, we can analyze, well, why did Armitage do that? Why did Armitage make pinch and inch not rhyme neatly at the end of lines as they normally do, but almost just a little bit off? And of course, the answer is linked directly to the language. Armitage is trying to highlight how there's this sense of just like almost but not quite managing to hold on to that kind of relationship where your child still really needs you and you have to let go of them and let them be really independent. Now I want you to have a go. I want you to try and identify another structural technique going on in this poem. And I want you to ask yourself first, what is the language saying? What is the effect of the language in this poem? And then ask yourself, okay, this structural technique I found, how does it reinforce the effect being created by that language?